Welcome to the Grad Life Podcast, where we're talking about all things grad.
I'm Rami.
And I'm Jess.
Today, we're talking about Thesis versus Practicum, how to prepare for each route, and some fun conversations about serial killer documentaries.
Ooh.
All right, let's get into it.
All right. We're glad to be here today.
I guess we are, yeah.
I just answered for everyone in the studio.
Yeah, speak for yourself.
I will. But so today we have our special guest, Dr. Colleen McDonough, who is our Master's of Forensic Psychology Program Director. Hand clap. All right. Colleen, do you just want to give us like a little backstory of like who you are, how you got here? I know you helped create the Master's in Forensic Psychology program, so maybe just like a quick tidbit about that.
Okay. So I started at Newman in 2005, and I was in the undergraduate psych program. I was a professor, and I stayed with the undergrad program for about 15 years. And then when the COVID pandemic hit, I had the opportunity to go work for the Central Intelligence Agency, which was, it was really, it was, I mean, I can't say much about the work that I did there, but it was absolutely a dream job. It was something I had wanted to do for a really long time, and I couldn't pass it up. So wow. I went down to Langley, and I worked there for about 2 years. My intention all along was to move down there, but, sometimes life has a funny way of happening. So I ended up not moving down, and I started thinking maybe I shouldn't be commuting from Pennsylvania to Langley for the rest of my life. So I got back in touch with some people here at Newman, and it turned out very exciting that the director position was open for this master's program in forensic psych. And yes, I did help to design the program. So right before I left to go to the CIA, I wrote the program proposal with Kristen Acosta, one of our CJ professors. And yeah, she got it over the finish line when I was gone, and it was like, I don't know, just very serendipitous. It was meant to be.
Yeah.
This position was open just at the time when I was like, I feel like I need to be back at Newman. So yeah, I'm back, with some expertise from the Intel community that hopefully I can impart on some of the students. And quite a few of them, by the way, are interested in the intelligence track. So, yeah, wow, I'm thrilled to be back.
Love how timing just works.
I just wonder if there's a CIA agent anywhere just like walking around campus right now, just keeping tabs on you.
Probably.
Okay, well, that's kind of scary, but
it's Colleen.
Yeah. Just kidding. All right. We're just going to get like right into it now.
Okay.
So apparently there are like two different tracks you can really take, like a thesis and a practicum. Could you just describe what the difference between the two are?
Yeah, so in the second year of the program, students have to do a capstone project, which is, in the first year, they're going to take all of their core classes to give them the solid foundation. And then in the second year, they do a capstone where they apply, those core concepts to some larger project. So if they choose the practicum, it's basically a souped up internship. So it's right now, they're doing about 600 hours total over the course of the academic year, and they're actually working somewhere applying the skills in a work setting. And where they can go, it's actually super broad. So students that are really interested in the more psychological aspects of forensic psych can end up going and working in social services and, working with domestic violence victims or, children with disabilities or with people, dealing with substance abuse issues. Students that are really interested more in the legal track can go work for a law firm, or they can try to go work with the courts. Yeah, so students that are interested in the CJ track can go and work, in the prison system or work, within a police,
precinct?
Yeah, within a police precinct. So, and then of course there's students interested in intelligence. And I always tell students that want to do the intelligence track and that want to do a practicum in intelligence, they really need to start getting their ducks in a row. Like when they first join the program, because if they want to do something, and there are plenty of intelligence internships, but if students want to do that kind of stuff, there can sometimes be a pretty lengthy background clearance process. So they definitely want to like start thinking about that really right away when they hit the ground.
Wow. So is it like a year long or something?
It could be. I mean, mine took over 3 years. Now, there were a lot of factors that caused mine to be longer, not the least of which was COVID. But yeah, I mean, they're easily 9 months. So, so that's the practicum track. So with the practicum, students are going to actually work and apply the principles of forensic psychology in a work setting. The thesis track, students are going to do some sort of a research project. Some of them will end up doing a research project where they actually have to like do a survey or do interviews, collect data, more scientific. But some students will end up doing just a larger like theoretical analytical program. I have a student right now that's doing a deep dive into a serial killer. Yeah.
Which one are we talking about?
The Gligo Beach serial killer. He was the one that was just found, I think in Jersey. I think in New Jersey. There are a lot of unexplained disappearances, and they linked them to him. So, so she chose that one because there's not a lot written on this person yet. So she felt like it was, kind of right for the picking. But yeah, I mean, those are the two tracks. So they can either go work or they can do a research project. And like in terms of what direction I would recommend students take, I would say for sure if students want to go and get more education after the master's, if they want to go into a doctorate program, definitely they want to do the thesis track because it looks really good to have that research foundation. Yeah, for sure.
I feel like I don't know which one that I would rather do. I think me personally, probably the thesis track. But I think it depends on like obviously what program you're going into, like more than just forensic psychology. But if you're in a master's program, that gives you an option, or if that's like the reason you're a decision maker, like should I go into a program at this school because they offer that thesis track, or should I go into the practicum track because that other school offers that? But like, can you like maybe explain like how to decide which track you want to go into?
What I'm finding, at least with the students, this is a pretty new program. So we're running our second cohort through right now. And what I'm finding with the students that we have right now is that the decision is kind of made for them already. So a lot of them are working full time. A lot of them have family responsibilities on the side. Right. And it's really challenging. When you have a full-time job and you're going to school full-time, it's challenging to figure out how to carve out additional hours to do the practicum. So I would say there's definitely a few students this year that really were kind of hoping to do a practicum, but just like could not find the hours in the day to do it. And so they're doing a thesis. Maybe it wasn't their first choice, but they're gonna make the most out of it.
I think that's why I think I would want to do the thesis, is because of that. Like, there's way too many family responsibilities for me to carve out time to do a practicum.
Yeah.
But like, as grad students, I wish that there was a way that was more practical, right? Like, I can still work and make enough money to support my family and then also do this practicum, because at the end of the day, that's what's leveling you up. You're going to get that hands-on experience and then be able to maybe work in that type of experience too, especially if you're a grad student and like you're changing careers and that's why you're doing a master's program. So, I mean, hopeful wishing, I guess, to say the least.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just the complete opposite of you. Like, I just would much rather do the practicum than a thesis. Mm-hmm. But if I could carve out time, I would totally do that. But I'm full-time now.
Yeah.
And I end up being full-time. I'll have responsibilities. I won't have the time to do that. And I absolutely hate research. Like, sitting there and just looking through articles and trying to find the things that I need. I don't have time for that.
I love that stuff. I can't totally sit there and read it. Thesis.
Nah, big practical guy. I'll learn everything hands-on. I've always been that way.
Yeah. I think that's like, I would really like to do things hands-on, but it just comes down to the time management. Like, you can't fit everything in, and it's okay to be okay with that. So for your students that are kind of more so forced to
Yeah.
do the thesis, how do you like encourage them and support them as far as like, look, it's okay that you had to do this thesis, but you know, maybe you can do something else on the side, or maybe like do a part-time position here, or maybe you're working in the field already and then maybe you can sneak in and work at a different department in that.
Yeah, so like I'm definitely open to exploring that last thing that you said as a possibility. Like if somebody's working kind of in the field, you know, maybe just for, you know, certain hours of their job, get experience working in a different department. Like I'm totally open to that. Like, you know, there's nothing that says you can't make money during your practicum, right? It doesn't have to be an unpaid internship. So I'm totally fine with exploring that. And one of the students was actually trying to do something like that. She's working, well, she has a full-time job. And she was trying to figure out a way that she could make it forensic, but it just didn't work out. And I think, you know, I'm very enthusiastic about research. So, you know, I think if students have to do that as a fallback plan, I hope that I can kind of impart some, you know, excitement about the process with them. And I really want, like, when they do research, I really want them to do research on something that they care about. Like, I'm not going to say, okay, here's the research project you have to do. Like, I want to sit down and talk to them and ask them, what do you want to do with your life? What do you see yourself doing for a job later? And let's try to find a research topic that ties directly into that. So, you know, even if you're not getting that research experience, well, you know, if you want to go and, you know, work on the fentanyl crisis, you've got this huge paper that when you apply to a job, you can say, look, I researched this during my master's program. So, yeah.
That's a good way to play it. Yep.
Yeah.
What's a skill or like a general skill that you'd expect a student to learn by the end of their master's degree? It doesn't have to be related to forensic psych, of course, but in general from a master's degree.
Yeah, so I think there's a few skills that are super important for students to come out of any master's program with, and they're definitely something that we focus on in the program. We want students to be able to write, we want students to be able to talk, and we want students to be able to think. Like, so, you know, are those things that they do at the undergraduate level as well? Sure. Like they're doing that kind of work at the undergraduate level. And I think undergraduate programs have those expectations as well, but it's on steroids in a master's program. So, you know, we want them to be able to think on their feet. And that means be able to answer questions without consulting notes or without stumbling. Like we want them to be able to give a confident oral presentation on the fly. And we want them to be able to write. And in our program, there's lots of different types of writing that they do. So they do legal writing, they do forensic assessment writing, they do intelligence writing. So there's different kinds of writing, but we want them to be able to just excel in the business of writing without, you know, so that by the end they can write something without having heavy edits on it. And then critical thinking. I mean, it's something. It's a skill that you learn over the lifetime. Like you know, you keep it's a muscle that you have to exercise regularly, and it's definitely true in forensic psych, and I think it's probably true in most master's programs. You need to be able to weigh evidence. You need to be able to see bias. And somehow come to the truth, whatever the truth happens to be.
What steps do you think should be taken for grad students to prepare for a practicum route?
So a lot of this is going to depend on the program. Some programs already have kind of a book of business. They have sites that commonly accept their graduate students. So in a program like that, I would say what a student needs to do is start talking with the program director or their faculty members. I would say right in the beginning, like the first semester in the program, no matter when the practicum takes place, I think these are conversations that should be had early on. So start talking to, you know, whoever the faculty or administrators are in the program about what options they have and see if there's any there that they think would be good placements for them. in other programs like our program, which is in its infancy, we're still building up our contacts. And so students have to do a lot of the groundwork themselves in terms of looking for available internships, reaching out to businesses, finding whether they have an internship program, whether they're going to take anyone. So
how soon should that happen, though?
I mean, honestly, I would say it shouldn't happen any later than their first spring semester. So, they come in the fall, their second semester, they should definitely be starting to line things up, because you want to hit the ground running. Like, you don't want to get to fall semester and you still don't have your practicum lined up, and the weeks are ticking by and you're supposed to be accumulating hours and you're still trying to figure out where you're going to work.
So what about the other route? What about a thesis? How should grad students prepare for the thesis option?
Definitely they want to start thinking, okay, so with the practicum route, if they want to go the practicum route, I think the period of preparation for that is longer, because, like I said, they're going to need to reach out and find practicum sites, or at least coordinate with their director to find a practicum site. So I feel like that's got a longer lead time. With a thesis, I think there's less work that needs to be done at the forefront, but definitely they want to start thinking about what topic they would like to study. And ideally, if they have time, go into the library databases or go into do a Google search and start seeing what's out there on their topic. Because, at the undergraduate level, when you're asked to do even an undergraduate thesis, like if you're doing some sort of a research-based undergraduate thesis, I think it's typically less critical that you're doing something new. So, at the undergraduate level, if you're doing a thesis project, as long as you're kind of checking all the boxes, it's not so important that you're making a new contribution to the field. But at the master's level, we really want to see these students and this is across all master's programs, you really want to see the student making a novel contribution, not just replicating somebody else's work. So, looking for what's out there, what other people have done, trying to figure out what your niche is. I mean, that's what I would recommend that students do in advance.
I would recommend to have that conversation early on, like before maybe even getting admitted to the program. Like, meet with program directors of different master's programs that you're interested in and talk to them about their ideas, and maybe go back and forth on, hey, would this be a good thesis idea if I were to go into your program?
Yeah.
So that way that conversation starts early, because I know with my research project, I probably rewrote it 3 times and had 3 different topics in a 1.5 year time period. So yeah, you don't want to be like me and do that. So start the conversation early.
And with my research project, we probably adjusted things like 15 times before we got our IRB in order.
Oh, yeah.
Fun fact, I think you signed my IRB.
Okay, yeah.
Your name was on it.
Okay, yeah, I'm the IRB chair.
Yeah, there we go. It's like, oh, we're going to do a podcast with her.
I hope I approved you.
Yeah, you did. Okay. You did. Took a while, but
questions are about to get really harsh in here.
I hope we did it justice, though. We're going through it.
Okay.
So let's get into some of the fun questions here.
Okay.
Colleen, what's your favorite documentary?
I don't know that I have a favorite, but I actually brought a list because I knew you guys were going to ask me about these. I love reading about and watching shows about cults. I just find them to be so psychologically fascinating. The influence that the cult leaders have over the people that have joined their cult. And there's a few documentaries on some of these cults, and at least one of the ones that I'm going to talk about, this was a serial killer, the Jonestown Massacre, right? So he massacred, 300 people, drank the Kool-Aid. There's a couple shows on that, but the one is Jonestown Terror in the Jungle. It was a series. I don't know what network it was on.
That.
Yeah, Jonestown Terror in the Jungle. It was 2018, I think. And then there was another one called Jonestown, The Life and Death of the People's Temple. And that was like 2006. I'm fascinated by the Jonestown cult. I don't know if do you guys know anything about the Jonestown cult?
Give us a little
I've heard
synopsis.
the name, but
Yeah, so Jim Jones, he was a preacher. This was back, I want to say, in the 70s, in the 60s, or maybe it was 60s or 70s. He was a preacher. He had this small church, and he was a preacher like right around the civil rights movement when, you know, everything was happening, you know, in Washington and people were fighting for civil rights. And he was very charismatic, and he had this church where he opened the church to people of all colors and creeds. And so this was like something that people didn't do. And he developed this cult-like following. Ironically, it turned into a real cult. He ended up moving his church, I think, to California, and then the cult became pretty big, and he was like using drugs and stuff. This is, you know, it must have been in the 60s because he was using drugs as well. And he decided to move.
Everybody,
you know, it was the summer love. He moved the cult down to French Guiana, which I think is, I don't know, it's like in South America. He got some land down there. They gave him some land. He moved the cult down there, and he just. I don't want to spoil the show if you're going to watch it, but like a lot of weird stuff started to happen. He was very controlling. He was doing some really weird stuff. He was getting very paranoid. And he ended up convincing all of his followers to drink Kool-Aid that was laced with, I don't know, arsenic or something. And they all killed themselves. And he did convince them, like when you look at the documentary, it's not like he poisoned them. He convinced them to do it. Wow. And there were like practice runs that he had them practice drinking the Kool-Aid, like in the weeks leading up to the final thing. And like
some psychological conditioning there.
There's definitely conditioning, and the parents gave the Kool-Aid to the kids first. So like,
oh my God,
like they could see that and it was whatever the poison was, it was fast acting. So like they could see that these people were dying, and they all drank the Kool-Aid. So that's where that phrase comes from, drink the Kool-Aid. It's from the Jonestown
That's something
cult.
I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Learn something new every day, as they say. I'm researching different cults right now.
You are?
Yeah.
Oh, there's so many fascinating ones.
I mean, they're saying something about the Manson family here.
Yep, they were a cult.
David Koresh's Branch Davidians.
Yeah, the Waco's on my list. I think the Waco cult they're so fascinating. And that one is so interesting too from a forensic psych perspective, because the FBI, so David Koresh was running this cult in Waco, Texas. And, you know, it was a religious based cult. Like they viewed him as, you know, a prophet. You know, there's probably some weird stuff going on, but they were pretty peaceful people, but they had been collecting a pretty large arsenal of weapons. They weren't threatening anyone with them, but they were collecting. They had a lot of weapons. And so FBI and ATF got involved. They tried to raid the place, and the people wouldn't come out. And they ended up having, I feel like it was a very long standoff. I feel like it was like 45 days or something. And it ended with and I'm not sure who actually started it. I think they started it themselves. You can watch the documentary, but basically the whole compound burned and almost everybody died. There were kids. And why I think it's interesting from a forensic psych perspective is because ATF and FBI were super hostile and aggressive and like really, really poked a bear where they could have de-escalated, but they didn't. They made a bad situation worse. So yeah, there's a couple good. There was one that just came out this year on that, the Waco American Apocalypse on Netflix.
I've heard about that.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say,
saw
like,
it.
where are all these documentaries?
Yeah.
If you're looking for them,
Waco's
you'll find them.
Yeah, the Waco one's definitely on Netflix.
And then here's another one. One last one, I promise.
Okay.
The Children of God.
Was that the? Tell me the name of the leader.
Berg. David Berg. Something. Well, according to Teen Vogue, at least. Not. I know it's not as credible, but that's where I'm finding it here on my phone.
Oh man.
Yeah, it doesn't seem very. They encouraged what's the word? Spicy activities as
Okay.
a means to get closer to God,
Okay.
regardless of age or relationship.
Okay.
And it's a rule that resulted in rampant child sexual abuse and incest.
Okay. Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff kind of involves some spicy things that,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
behind closed doors. I
Yeah.
don't know. This is starting to get like a very fascinating conversation.
Well, here I got
what I'm reading
another
tonight.
I got another good one.
Okay.
Just
All
because
ears.
I love cults. The Heaven's Gate cult.
I'm gonna have
Heaven's
nightmares
Gate.
tonight, guys. So
I read about that here.
Yeah, the Heaven's Gate cult. So this one was really interesting. Well, their whole story is interesting, but I think this is probably when I became interested in cults was with this Heaven's Gate thing, because this happened like 10 miles from my house.
Is this about aliens?
Yeah. So,
Yes.
yeah. So they lived in San Diego, and their leaders believed that there were aliens on the tail of the Hale-Bopp comet, it came after the Halley's comet. There was this other comet called the Hale-Bopp comet, and they believed that there were aliens in the tail of the Hale-Bopp comet, and that they had to kill themselves to go be with the aliens who were going to take them to the promised land. Yeah, and all these people, I don't remember how they died, but I think they poisoned themselves. But they found them like the next day, and they were all dressed exactly the same with like the same pair of sneakers on. It was so weird. There was so much weird stuff with this.
And this happened by your house?
It was, yeah. I mean, I lived in San Diego, and it was like probably, I don't know, 10 miles from where I lived.
Jeez.
Yeah.
A lot of weird
Yeah.
things happen out west. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hashtag East Coast. So I was just thinking about like how students sometimes like will watch certain documentaries, right? Or like certain TV shows like SVU or Criminal Minds, maybe it's like Scandal or something. And then that's like their sole reason for like, I want to do a career in this. And like, in order to get to that, I maybe need to do a program in forensic psychology. Have you ever like talked to students like that? Or is that like, do you tell them, what do you say to them in those moments when they say, I came here because of a TV show?
Well, no one's ever said that to me. So I'll start.
I would have been the only one.
Yeah, I'll start with that. I have had students that come to me, and probably in the back of their mind, some of them might be thinking about the TV show, but they've come to me and said, like, this is what I want to do for a job. And for a lot of people, they want to work for FBI's behavioral analysis unit. And, you know, I try to be honest with them. You might get a job there and you might not. So like just having a master's in forensic psychology doesn't mean you're going to get a job there. Like there's a lot of things that you have to do. And a lot of the people that work in a position like that have the clinical degree. So, you know, I would just tell them, look, maybe you do this program and then after this you go and get your PhD in clinical psych with the forensic board certification. So I haven't had, I guess, you know, to answer your question, I have not had any students say, I want to come here for the TV show. Actually, in contrast, what I see a lot, I would say like the majority of the students, they want to be in this program because something has happened in their life that makes them motivated to be in this field. And for a lot of the students, it's actually, I think for most of them, it's some kind of hardship. Like somebody in their life was murdered, or somebody in their life had a really bad interaction with the police, or they're in jail, or, you know, they're dealing with addiction in you know, somebody in their family. Like there's something that has been a hardship for them, and they're just compelled to be in this field because they want to help. So, I mean, yeah, some of them have lofty goals, but that doesn't mean they're not going to get there. Like, they just need to approach it realistically.
So they automatically have that passion behind them because of the experience that they had.
Yeah.
Colleen,
for
thank
sure.
you for joining us today. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hang out with us, talk about documentaries and academic stuffs.
We have some new list of documentaries to watch now.
I might go watch one tonight.
I won't, but
I'll let you know how it goes tonight. I'll text you and tell you which one I'm watching.
I'm going to find my stories on repeat, so.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Of course,
Thank you.
A pleasure.